Hey guys, what's up? It's Wes. So it's been nearly 2 years since we had the first episode of Ask Wes, and then we didn't have any more. But that changes today. We're going to be doing episode number 2 of Ask Wes here. We got a lot of questions to go through, a lot of really good ones. We got some stuff about some games. We got some announcements to make. We got some advice for people and kind of their artistic struggles. So yeah, without further ado, let's jump on in and give you hopefully something that resembles some answers. Let's go. All right, so we are here. Very excited about this. I did kind of an open call on the community tab and on my Discord for my patrons and stuff. If you're interested in being a patron, there's going to be a Patreon link down in the description below. It's only $1 a month. You get Discord access, private chat and stuff. They were the first people to know about this Q&A. They get like art critiques and they get to see work in progress stuff. It's really cool. But anyways, we got a whole bunch of questions to get through, which I'm super stoked about. Very happy with. Let's just get to it, man. The first question, well, the first two questions are from my boy, Marco, from Nerd in the Bay. Awesome channel. Go check it out. Definitely go check it out because yours truly is going to be on a podcast of theirs very, very soon. But let's get into these questions. So first one from Nerd in the Bay. Are you playing anything nowadays? Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot. So I'm just going to list, it's going to scroll real quick. These are just the games that I have put at least 1 hour into over the past month. And these are just the video games. Another thing I've gotten really big into over the past, I want to say like a year and a half, 2 years, well, since the filming of the first Ask Wes, are tabletop games. Tabletop role-playing games, skirmish games, especially. So lately, and it's cool that Marco sent one in because I have Marvel Crisis Protocol. Great game. If you've never played a skirmish game, you're into Marvel or you're into any of the comic book style stuff, Crisis Protocol is fantastic. You get all the nice terrain, you get all the cool abilities and stuff, but the nice thing about the terrain, not only do you get to scale the terrain and fly over it and all that stuff, if you have a character that has the ability to, you can lift up, move, and even throw terrain at your enemies. It's nuts. So you really get to live that kind of love of comic book and that power fantasy of it. It's super rad. But like there's a Middle Earth strategy battle game. I got that Battle for Osgiliath set. I have a Kill Team set. I can just look up here and see all my stuff. I have Star Wars X-Wing. I actually did order the new Warcry set. Well, the new core set, the Heart of Gur. It's coming. It'll probably be in the mail in the next week or so. Honestly, too many. But we're going to talk about why and another question. But yeah, man, playing tons of games. In fact, one of the main announcements from this video, I'm playing a lot of video games. I have a little bit more time. You know, the client work slowed down a little, but the nice thing is the client work is bigger now. So I'm able to take a little bit more of a break and focus kind of on content, which is actually second part of your question. But something I'm excited about, since I'm getting more into games and playing them more for just fulfillment and enjoyment, I'm going to bring back Wes versus Backlog. It is a video game show where I go and I just play stuff for like an hour and a half. We talk about it. It's real chill. You just kind of get to see some games. All these games are games that I own. They're in my backlog. I used to do 2 separate ones, one for retro games where I did like a retrospective of older games, and then kind of the newer stuff. But I think I'm going to bring back Wes versus Backlog and just do all of it. So it's going to have some retro stuff, some like HD remasters, brand new stuff. I know I want to do an episode on Diablo 4 when that comes out. So like there's a lot of like hobby stuff I'd like to do. And I think creating content and doing that, it's going to be a lot of fun. But yeah, so that's the big announcement. So yes, sir, I've been playing a ton of stuff. And some of those are actually going to be on the newer episodes of Wes versus Backlog. So be sure to subscribe if you haven't, especially if you're into games. And if you're not into games, if you just follow for the art, maybe this is a nice little gateway to see some cool contemporary video games or maybe some old school stuff that you maybe never have heard of, or maybe something you have heard of, you just haven't had somebody that you know kind of play through it and give their thoughts and stuff. But hopefully, it's going to be a lot of fun. I know more about video making now than I did way back when. So yeah, here's to it. So question number 2 from our friend Marco at Nerd in the Bay. Being a new father, congratulations. He has an adorable little boy. Awesome. So cool. I want to ask, how do you balance creating content with your everyday duties of being a dad? So the benefit of being an artist is I work out of my house. I am a stay-at-home dad and also a full-time production artist, concept artist, illustrator, painter. Everything I do, I can do here at home. So what's nice is we save a lot of money on daycare. But yeah, so I get to do the dad thing during the day. And then, at, let's see, 9:15 at night, I get to have energy drinks and then work until 4 a.m. So sleep is not something I'm friends with anymore. I don't hardly get any of it, but I wouldn't, trade it for anything because it's awesome. But yeah, the balancing act is hard. I usually start my work day at about 8 p.m. and work till about 3 or 4 in the morning. So I get a full, at least 40 hours a weekend. But that is a combination of things. It can be, if I have a lot of deadlines, it's going to be hitting that stuff. It's going to be doing Twitch. I like to do if I'm painting and just kind of hanging out. I like to live stream it nowadays. It's just fun to hang out and chat with people and be able to work in real time on something so people can ask questions as they see me working on something. But then it's also stuff like this. So since I didn't have a painting thing to do today, I have some personal paintings, but there's no deadlines on those. Those can take as long as I want them to. I wanted to do this, film this. So it just depends. I do something every single day. In fact, I do multiple things every single work day. 7 days a week. It is what it is. It's a life I chose. There's that old saying that, I was tired of my 9-to-5 job. So now I work 24/7. But yeah, being a dad is the coolest thing in the world. So yeah, it's a weird balance, but it's one that I'm happy to tweak and try to maximize the potential of all of it. So yeah, so thank you, Marco, for those amazing questions, and I will see you very soon, my friend. At least digitally online, we'll be filming a podcast. So yeah, go sub to Nerd in the Bay. I'll have a link to their channel in the description as well. So let's go over to our next question from Mr. Frall from YouTube. Hey, what is your favorite painting material besides digital art? Thanks for your videos, very inspiring works. Thank you, my friend. So my favorite painting, medium or style that I like to use besides digital art is always going to be oil painting. I love oil painting. I love everything about oil painting. I love that it dries super slow, so I can push paint around and I'm not adhered to something immediately like I would be with like a watercolor or acrylic. I love all of it. It's thicker. It's like painting with honey. If you mix in liquid with it or like Gamsol or something like that, you can really change the way it feels and looks. And I mean, oil painting's been around for centuries, if not millennia. So it's tried and true. It works a different part of my brain than digital art. I have to pre-plan way more for an oil painting than I do for a digital piece. Digital, you can kind of get away with a lot because you're working layers, and if something's not working, you can just scrap it. But with oil painting, you kind of have to fight through it, right? And it's a lot of fun. It's less pressure in a weird way, because with digital art, you have control over every pixel all the time. So if it's not exactly the way you want it, you only have yourself to blame. You know what I mean? Like, you're just not good enough, or whatever you're going to tell yourself in your mind. Like, oh, it needs to be exactly what I see in my mind because I have control of every nuance, every pixel of light and color and whatever. But with an oil painting with more traditional medium, it's kind of happenstance. It's like the art gods are either with you or they're not, right? And as you put down your painting, yeah, you can do stuff to kind of make it do some things, but especially if you're like a watercolor artist, you're not going to control water. Like water is its own thing, right? So you have another artist kind of in there with you during the process. So with oils, it's how well did I mix? How well did the mediums set? And did I let it dry all the way, or oxidize rather? There's a lot more that goes into it, in my opinion, but a lot of that feels like it's more hands-off. Like I'm playing with the elements, as it were, and it's just, there's something liberating about that. Knowing that I don't have total control is actually more relaxing. I just let the chips fall where they may, and then it's fun. So oil painting, for sure. But thank you very much for the kind words, Mr. Frall. And let's move on over to our Discord. So these next set of questions are going to be from two individuals. One is Michael Clark, and then the other is Brent Partner. Both are patrons, and they're on the Discord, and that's where I got all of these. So I'm just going to put up all of these and then highlight each one that I'm going on. But links, or timestamps, I should say, to every one of these questions will be in the description. So if you want to read through those, kind of pick the ones you want, yeah, I'll make it easy for you. But let's start with Michael Clark. He has quite a few questions. All of them are rad. What was the most challenging aspect of writing your book? What did you learn from doing it? How did you grow as an artist by compiling your book? So for those that don't know, and yes, once again, link in the description. I do have a book that I wrote, Draw and Paint Better with Krita. It actually, we were developing it before Krita 5, but I was writing it as Krita 5 came out. So we rewrote 4 or 5 chapters out of a 13 chapter book. So it was about 1 year of working at least 3 hours a day, every day, for a year on the one project. So I'm super proud of it. I'm super proud of the book. It really taught me patience. It taught me to be more clear in my vision of what I wanted the book to be. So my goal for the book, and I have a full book walkthrough on the YouTube channel, and you know, it's like 20 minutes long, and I talk about some of the behind the scenes stuff and things, but really what I wanted to do is I wanted to make a book that read like a semester of art class. I wanted to be an art instructor, or like, as I call it in the book, your art guardian angel. And I want to be there as you're either learning the ropes on digital art, like if you've never done it before, what's the first time you turn on Krita and get it installed, to like making something that you can put in your portfolio to hopefully start getting hired. That was the goal. And it really changed. It actually changed a lot of the way Pact works as well. Mine's actually the first book in Pact's library to have header images. I wanted to show paintings. I'm like, if we're making an art book, why don't we show some art? You know, so the header images and stuff. So working with a big team that really knows their craft made me be better at mine. So every word you read, every caption, every image, I did all of that. All of it. Literally all of it. We had technical editors, we had copy editors, we had people like that to make sure that it flowed well. But every sentence and comma and period, I wrote. I have all the documents, I have all the notes on them, redline stuff out and move it around. It was a blast. It was sometimes frustrating. It was to try to make this thing a living, breathing document that can age with you. Even if you're a pro artist, maybe you're gonna find some like hidden gems in the book. That was the goal. I wanted to make the book for as many people as possible. And depending on where you are in your art journey, whether you're just starting off as a hobbyist or you just like you're a weekend warrior, as it's called, you just like to do stuff on the side. No, I made a few paintings this year. You know, you're into it and you really like it. It's a nice side hobby, but it's not your main priority. You're going to find a lot to like. If you're a pro that's worked on, you know, Star Wars or Warhammer or Marvel or whatever, you're going to find something in here to like as well. I just wanted it to be, no matter where you're at in your journey, you're going to find something. But it was a lot of work, man. I got a ton of respect for anyone that gets a book out. It's not easy. It's not easy. Next question. You've worked for some really cool clients, and you have more under non-disclosure agreement, but who else is on your bucket list? So it's weird, man. My bucket list grows the more people I work with. It's bigger now than it's ever been, you know, just because I meet so many cool people and I get to work with so many cool people that there's a lot of opportunities that I can see now that I couldn't see before. So I'm just going to name off like 5 or so, you know, however many I name off. But one, I would love to get at least something in Heavy Metal magazine. I love Heavy Metal magazine. I remember watching the movie, you know, way back when and being like, what is this? This is crazy. But, you know, some of my art gods are in Heavy Metal magazine. So I think that would be a lot of fun to be a part of. Spectrum, the annual by Flesk Publications. Spectrum is one of those things that literally everybody I admire and look to in the industry I'm in specifically. So like card games, tabletop role-playing games, comic book illustration, you know, cover art, all that stuff. That's the place. Like if you are in Spectrum, you are the best in the world. And there's no, it's period. Like you're the best. So I would love to get in there. And that's because I was in Imagine FX magazine and I got to see how that nuance kind of worked and stuff. So that grew. But really, and here's the one that's going to take people by surprise. I really want my art in a massively multiplayer role-playing game. That is a genre that is near and dear to my heart. So games like Ultima Online and EverQuest, back in the days, it was like Star Wars Galaxies, Earth and Beyond. These are some deep cuts, by the way. So, but nowadays, like the ones in particular that I would really love is Guild Wars 2. The ArenaNet art team are incredible. Lord of the Rings Online and Dungeons and Dragons Online. I believe they're both bought out now by Standing Stone Games, if that's right. They used to be Daybreak Studios, I think, and or Sony Online type stuff. So, yeah, that would be like a double whammy, because anything, you know, Wizards of the Coast or Lord of the Rings, I'm in. Like, yes, put it in my veins. That's what I want. But really specifically, I would love to have it as like a loading screen or maybe motion graphic, like comic book art stuff for them. God, that'd be so cool. I just love those games so much, and that whole genre. It's really a living, breathing world. It has its own economy, all this other stuff, and to have kind of my little nook of it to be able to call my own would be unbelievable. But yeah, Wizards of the Coast, Modifius, Fantasy Flight, Paizo, another big one, Free League Publishing. Basically, if you make tabletop role-playing games, I want to work with you. That's how it works. It is what it is. So let's do question number 3. What medium would you like to try for the first time or haven't explored in a long time and would like to revisit? Ooh. So I'd like to try gouache. I would like to try it. I've never tried it. I don't even think I've seen it in person. I've seen paintings made with it in person, but like I don't think I've ever seen anyone use gouache in person. And my understanding, and I could be completely wrong on this, is it's almost a hybrid between watercolor and acrylic. Like it's a thicker watercolor, but a more loose acrylic. So like, I don't know how I would work with that. It's bizarre, right? Like, I don't know. But I've seen James Gurney use a ton of it and he swears by it. So it's like, well, you know, if the master can use it, then, you know, I should probably at least figure out what this stuff's all about. But another one that I want to do more of, and this will actually give me an excuse to get out my physical sketchbooks, is graphite and charcoal. So charcoal is great because it is basically painting with pencil. You have these bigger stubs, depending on kind of the granularity of it and the thickness of the charcoal. It makes darker lines, so you can really work on edges and forms and I think that's really cool. And also I think that's a great way to bridge the gap between painting and drawing. I have probably 4 or 5 videos on the channel about my struggles with drawing. I just don't know where it fits in my process, but maybe something like that might help a little bit. Yeah, so I'd say those two, but gouache seems the most interesting just because I have no context for it. I don't know what it feels like or how it works, or I don't know. So it'd be a whole new learning curve. And that's the great thing about the arts. There's always something else, you know what I mean? But anyway, let's see. What are your art goals? What do you see as your artistic strengths? What would you like to improve on? And I don't see you do many vehicles or creatures. So I'll kind of answer these in order. And I think the last part about the vehicles and creatures will explain the other stuff as well. So my art goals is just to get better. I know that's not really a direct answer, but there's so much that I feel like I need to improve on. I need to improve on my rendering, my clarity of idea, my design sense, I guess. Making an intriguing image. So making an image that just works and it makes you want to keep looking at it. I think a lot of times my strength is I do a lot of like brush work, but I also think that's one of my weaknesses is I like to hide behind it. Because here's the deal, and I'm going to say it. There's probably people out there that say it about my stuff anyway, and it doesn't hurt my feelings because I think they're true. My art is kind of boring. It is like, so I need to improve on more of the dramatic angles and maybe like foreshortening, like somebody like a figure like punching into the camera type stuff, like the more comic book influenced motion and action and like storytelling in the piece. I'm starting to dabble a little more in it. Like I did this cyberpunk exploration thing. I had this idea that, hey, a kid, kind of inspired by Watch Dogs 2, kid is like a hacker and is like getting away from cops or security guards that are chasing him, and he's like jumping off of a building, so he probably has like a parachute in his backpack or something. Like I don't know the exact details, but I like the idea of a running kid and like here's this guy, authority figure you would think, that has a gun pointed at him and he makes the jump anyway. So there's a story there and you can kind of like put yourself in there and it's the middle finger to authority type stuff. So it's a little more punk rock than the stuff I would do normally, but it's starting to dabble. Yeah, hopefully you're seeing that throughout the years. Is it's starting to get a little bit more heady, a little bit more idea driven instead of technique driven. But yeah, I don't see you do vehicles or creatures. And here's the real kicker, and probably the biggest thing I need to improve on. I do not have a good imagination. I just don't. Clients can come to me and they can, if they have a very specific thing they need, if they need to have me design something, I'm more than happy to do it. I'm more than happy to make it happen. But I do warn them ahead of time. I'm like, guys, if you want a magician or a mage or a wizard or something, I'm going to give you the most generic ass wizard you've ever seen. It's going to be the long beard and hood and the big stick. It's Gandalf. Like, there it is. Gandalf. I don't have a huge imagination. I like creating, and I like the technique and bringing, even if the idea is limited, I like bringing it to life. But the actual designing something, I'm not great at it. I'm going to give you the most generic version of the thing you ask for, which I know probably isn't selling me to a lot of clients. But, if we got good reference, if you give me an art Bible, if you give me some design stuff to work with, like you can give me some Sid Mead or Ralph McQuarrie or, Ian McCaig or something like that. And I can look at that and start to like expand out on it. But I need to see it first. And I think that's kind of my Achilles heel. I can't just design out of thin air. I need to see something. And then I can take something from it. So, but yeah. So really it's my imagination. I think that part's lacking. I really need to improve on it. But I think that's a lifetime goal. That's not something that's going to happen overnight. So thank you very much, Michael, for those awesome questions. And now we're going to move over to our good friend Brent. He has, I think, 5 or 6 questions, and we're going to get through them as well. So let's do that. All right. So Brent asks, have you ever considered doing your own world building artistically in a similar manner to what James Gurney did with Dinotopia? I'm sure that working for all these amazing companies would be very lucrative as you constantly work your way up the ranks, but with your own world of environments and creatures, you're actually working with your own IP that you can perhaps package and sell off licensing rights to writers, film companies, game companies, etc. Just curious if you've ever looked at your art that way. So here's announcement number 2. Yes, so I'm working on a fantasy and a sci-fi thing right now. I know I just got done saying that I have no imagination and I make the most mundane stuff ever, but not in regards to the narrative side of it. The narrative side of it is I got some ideas. But I will say, I've had things, like I'm going to show you a piece that's been in my portfolio for a while for a sci-fi thing called Crimson Shifters. It was basically a short story I wrote my, senior year in high school and my freshman year of college. And that's whenever I was in film production classes and stuff like that. So it was very filmic, very based on action movies, John Woo. Like, it has a lot of plot twist stuff. Like, I was really big into Hong Kong, and I still am, Hong Kong, like, crime cinema. And I thought mixing that with Blade Runner would be sick. Like, that's just a cool idea. So it's called Crimson Shifters, and that's on lock. Like, I own that, and I haven't done much with it, but I think I am now. And then there's another one that's a fantasy kind of IP that I'm working on, and it doesn't have a full name yet, but I'm going to show a piece to kind of hopefully give you an idea of where my head's at as far as the look and the feel of it. This is something I've been making for probably the past year, and I really needed to ask myself, well, what's in it for everyone else? Sure, what's in it for me is like I get to exercise and kind of make what I want to make, and that's cool, but who cares? I mean, I know that sounds bad, but like, really, what's the incentive for somebody that has no stake in this to care about it? And that's where these miniature kind of tabletop role-playing skirmish type games come into play, because I'm really finding that I love that format. I love tabletop role-playing like D&D and Warhammer Wrath and Glory and Soulbound and all that stuff, and like Shadowrun and things like that. So maybe I could go that route. Maybe these could be some world building things, or some open role-playing stuff. Or I would like to develop my own miniature agnostic tabletop war games, my skirmish games. Basically, no matter what you own as far as miniatures, whether it's Warhammer or like Warcry or Core Space, or like there's so many amazing brands, and like Reaper, Bones, they have their fantasy stuff, and there's so many cool little trinkets to buy, right? So whatever your collection is, or even if you haven't started a collection, like building a world in a very basic rule set to where you can get someone, or you can play it solo. You can just have a fun time, think a little bit tactically, roll some dice, have fun. You have a story to tell at the end, right? That's the appeal. And then, like, I would give those rules away for free. Like, I'll say it here right now, the actual game mechanic rules, I would completely make for free, because I'm not a game designer. I don't know what it takes. I'm not sure. Like, I don't know if it's any good. So I just want people to be able to play it. And then if they like it, they can give me that feedback. Or if they really don't, they can give me that feedback too. And I can change it and manipulate it and all that stuff, and, just have fun. But then what I can do is, once it's in a pretty stable place, let's say I make a digital deluxe rule book with art and full color spreads and stuff in it. You know what I mean? Like, it would be a cool thing to be able to fit. And since I'm big into world building and like cinema anyway, that's a natural fit for me. Like, there's where the ideas are cool. Like, we'll talk about this here in a little bit, but different art forms can influence that. So, on the sci-fi side, you have the John Woo, like guns akimbo, like, bullets going through things and flying through. You can make that type of artwork, which you don't see a lot of. Or with the fantasy stuff, you make it very ethereal, kind of political intrigue, but on a low fantasy setting. So something more akin to a Bloodborne, Dark Souls type thing, but not as gothic. I think there's some wiggle room there too, because everyone loves the dark gothic Diablo 4, Bloodborne, Dark Souls, Demon Souls, stick in the mud type stuff. But maybe there's something else, and maybe there's some wiggle room to tell some interesting story. So anyways, yes, very, very long, very long response, but yes. And as you can tell, I'm pretty excited about it. I've been developing these for a while now. They're just not at a place to show yet. So literally the stuff you've seen on this is the first anyone's ever seen of this stuff. So it's breaking, but yes, I am working on a lot of world building stuff, and I'm very excited to see where that leads, because that way I always have something to work on. And as I develop these projects, maybe I do need to make a rule book. I'm going to better understand the needs of a client that hires me to make art for their rule book. Does that make sense? Like, I have to go through the problem solving of getting the spacing right and like getting the filtering done, or the wash made for a background blend as far as the graphic design and the iconography. Like, I have to do all that problem solving, so that way if I'm hired by more tabletop people or like book cover artists or whatever, I will know their needs more intricately because I've had the same needs. And I think that's going to be very, very helpful. But question number 2, what percentage of time do you work on your strengths compared to those things that you consider weaknesses? This is a tricky question considering you're a full-time pro and time is very much money. Yes, it is. It is a question in all of the arts and something that consumes me, and I was curious about your opinions on the topic. Totally. So I need to break out of that habit of using my strengths to anchor my weaknesses. I just need to full on do the stuff I'm not good at. I just need to do it and do it and do it. And then that skill level of that starts rising. But like you said, time's money. Whenever people hire me, that's not the time to like be experimental and do things I'm not good at. And like, no. Like, that's why having your own world building IP or whatever, that's why that's so important, is you're flexing those muscles, and there's no stakes really. And the balance is hard. It is very hard. I will say that I'm wanting that percentage to get closer to 50-50, because for my first few years of being a pro, it was like 95% strengths and 5% weaknesses. But then what I started noticing, and this is really interesting, I don't know if it's like a weird paradox or space-time continuum, I don't know, is the more I started doing more of my weaknesses, and they were just, they're not good, like they're bad compared to my other stuff. But as I started getting away from that 95% strengths and 5% weaknesses to like 80% strengths and 20% weaknesses, that's when I started getting hired for bigger clients. And I can't explain it, because you would think, oh, I'm just going to do pieces that are 100% the stuff I'm good at. You'd think that would get you all the jobs. But what I'm realizing is, like, I don't know if it's the art directors that see it, they like the fact that I'm like reaching and I'm trying new things, or maybe there's gold in their hills. Like, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, is it because I'm exploring that now I'm getting noticed by bigger companies? Or is it because now those weaknesses aren't as bad as they used to be because I'm focusing on them? It's a weird balancing act. It really is. And I wish I had a good answer for you. But just know that I'm trying to get closer to 50-50. So I'm integrating more drawing into my stuff. I'm not great at drawing, but the more I do it, the better I'm going to get at it. You know what I mean? We talked about that earlier. but I think there's something to that. I think if you sprinkle it in there, then you're going to start solving different challenges. And I think that's going to make you better in the long run anyway. So yeah, hope that helps. Yeah, the more you do it, the easier it gets, just like anything. So number 3 from Brent. If you were a strapped for cash hobbyist, but looking to make professional work and a lot of progress, what 2 art programs would you choose to use and buy? I'll do you one better. I'll give you 3. So the first one I would get is Krita. I know I'm biased. I wrote a book about it. I'm a fan. However, Krita is completely free to download and use. I do recommend donating to the Krita Foundation if you can, if you are monetarily able. But you can make pro work with Krita easy. In fact, I know people that have made pro work with Krita. In fact, I've made pro work with Krita. Yeah, can't show any of it yet, but yes, I used Krita on some Warhammer stuff and on Star Wars stuff. So you'll see that soon, probably in the middle of this year, maybe. But Krita, yeah, get Krita. It's going to teach you some great foundational stuff, layer management, group management, kind of brightness, hue, saturation, working your way through a digital art program. You can learn all of the ropes through Krita, every single one of them. Now for the paid stuff, let's say I have 2 that I want to recommend you get. The first one is going to be more for if you like the kind of my style of stuff where it's more painterly, it feels like oil or acrylic painting, wet blending on a canvas type stuff. I highly recommend Paint Storm Studio. It's only $19, brand new, period. Like, they don't do many updates anymore. I think the last update was like a year and a half ago, but they don't need to. For me, knock on wood, it has never crashed. I've had amazing experience with it. It has a beautiful blending engine for those brushes. They feel like traditional brushes. And that's stuff that you can, stuff that will charge 4 to 5 times more money and have comparable results. So Paint Storm Studio, if you want to get into that painterly look, highly recommended on that one. And then if you want more of the tighter rendering, kind of the jack of all trades, basically if you want something that can do a lot of the things Photoshop can do without having to shell out per month, or go onto eBay for some crazy amount of money for an old version of Photoshop, I highly recommend Clip Studio Paint. Now, I know a lot of people would think I would say Affinity Photo, because Affinity Photo is almost 1-to-1 Photoshop. The only thing is with Affinity Photo, from what I have found, it doesn't run quite as well as I need it to when it comes to digital painting. Now, for like photo editing, it works great. It's genius. It's super good, and it's almost exactly like Photoshop. It's really good. But for digital painting, it's not quite there yet, in my opinion. But Clip Studio Paint, oh lordy, yes indeed. It is super good. You can have super tight knit rendering, ink pens and pencils, and it has built-in brush stabilization to make some nice line art. So if you're into like comic inking, you can do that. Beautiful brush engine on that one as well. I do highly recommend getting Ray Frendon's brush pack. It's over 1,000 brushes and it's like $15. And in my opinion, it's the reason to get Clip Studio Paint. If you get Clip Studio, get that Ray Frendon brush pack, and you're golden. Really, I know Clip Studio 2 is coming out. I'm gonna buy it because it's only gonna be a $20 upgrade, but I don't see a reason to. Clip Studio works incredibly well. Now, if you're on iPad or mobile, I know that you have to pay per month on that one. I wouldn't do that. I would go, if you're on mobile, I would go for Infinite Painter, Art Studio Pro. I dabbled only a little bit in that one. It's pretty good. You have an iPad, Procreate. Now, I'm still coming to terms with Procreate, but there's so much support. There's so many tutorials. The support is crazy. So it's a great $10 investment. But yeah, for desktop stuff, I would say Krita, since it's free to download and use, PaintStorm Studio, and Clip Studio Paint. You can do anything. Just with those three, you can make any type of image for any type of client on a professional level. No ifs, ands, or buts. Like, that's everything you need. And all told, that's less than $70 US for everything. So it's amazing. So yeah, hope that helps. Number 4 from Brent. Let me take a little sip of my G Fuel right here. This is the Sonic Party Blast or Party Mix or Party Punch. That's what it is. It tastes like Fruit Loops. Pretty good. I'm just saying, G Fuel, if you need a new sponsor, because you don't have enough already. I'm your man. Number 4. How does or how much does your art style change across different types of project mediums, i.e. cards, book covers, album covers, concept work, etc.? That's a great question. The more I work in all of these different avenues, so like magazine illustration, book covers, album covers, card art, like book illustration, spot illustration, I'm realizing that they all have way more in common than they have different. The number one thing across all of them is readability. Can you tell what the hell you're looking at? I know it sounds obvious. I know it sounds silly, but like, are your values controlled well? Do the shapes read well? All of that I learned through card art, because with a card, whenever you're making it for like Magic or Varia or like Hearthstone or whatever, I think, the digital games are different, but not much different. On the play mats and in your play area, the art itself is only going to be like 2 inches by 1 inch. It's going to be really small. So it needs to read well. You need to be able to tell what that card does narratively and be able to link what the card's stats are to the image within a half second. And the reason why, not only can you read your own card, but if someone across the table from you sets their card down, you need to be able to upside down see what that is, know what it is, know the function of it. That's built in, right? So readability. But readability also helps if you're making a movie poster. If you're driving by like a billboard, or you're driving by dropping someone off or going to the movies or whatever, you see a movie poster from 50 yards away, you can still see the silhouette. It's going to tell you that story. It's going to it's going to let you know what's going on. Now, I will say with book covers and album covers and things like that, and even some spot illustrations on the inside of like tabletop role-playing games, it's more narrative based. So you're really influencing the reader or the customer on the idea at work, on the ideas that are going to be in the album or in the book. So you can be a little bit more fine art, a little bit more esoteric, like, oh, I made this image, what do you think about it? Like, read into it, very much a gallery painter. You can get away with that more doing that because you're telling a narrative. But with stuff like especially the card games, they have to serve a function. It has to serve a function. And that's something I take across all of them. Like, what is this art doing? I don't care what's in the art. I don't care what colors there are. I don't care. What does it have to do? It has to sell this idea to this demographic, to this person on this day. You know what I mean? You have to design it. And I think doing that takes it to another level, but also can help relieve some of that stress of working for some of these big clients. Number 5, what is the fundamental thing that all new digital painters should master first? Ooh. I'm gonna make some people angry with this one. All right, here's the thing. I'm gonna give 2 answers. The first one is my real answer, The second one is the answer that probably everybody expects. Okay. So the first main answer, learn the program, learn the dexterity of using your machinery to do a thing. So learn where your layer panel is. Learn what some of your hotkeys are. You don't need all of them, just a few of them. How, like, oh, my Photoshop or my Clip Studio or whatever, how do I change from my brush to the eraser without having to click on something? Literally what I do, I change all of my hotkeys for every art program to mimic Photoshop. I've used Photoshop since 2001, 2001, right around there. So I have it ingrained and I don't want to relearn stuff. So I mean, I just don't really have time. That's probably why Procreate is so foreign to me, because it's not, I can't hit the B button and the E button and like change between brush and eraser. You know what I mean? I could, but I don't want to have a bunch of stuff plugged into the iPad. That like defeats the purpose. But even like with your, no matter what type of drawing device you have, whether it is an iPad or a monitor setup or just a tablet setup to where the tablet's in front of you and you're looking, like just that, having a tablet in front of you, making a mark, and then having to look at a monitor to see where the mark ended up, that's going to take a few weeks just to get your brain to know relative to where you're marking, where it's going to mark on the screen. That's what you need to master. You need to master using the tool itself. Be able to draw decent circles, be able to do decent lines. That's going to get you way further faster than anything else. So yeah, just learn your program. Whatever program you get, it doesn't even matter what program it is, whether it's Krita or GIMP or Clip Studio, or you get the newest Photoshop, or Corel Painter or whatever. Rebel, Art Rage, like I have hundreds of programs nowadays. It's ridiculous. Just learn the one. Find the one that excites you and go and learn what it can do, how to get there, and why you would maybe need that in your art development. I can tell you, for like Photoshop, I use maybe 1% of all of what Photoshop is capable of. There's so much stuff I've never even clicked on before, but I don't need it, right? I bet it does cool stuff. I don't know. I do not know. I would just say find your one and just learn the in and outs of like opening and closing the program. Sounds weird, but you're going to go way further, way faster than some of your peers because you won't be battling the software itself. And the second answer to that, fundamentals, sure. But whenever I always hear, oh, work on the fundamentals, I kind of roll my eyes because I'm like, okay, what are you talking about? Like, there's so many fundamentals. What do you mean? Do you mean color theory? Do you mean values? Do you mean edge control? Do you mean composition? Like, what do you mean? My number one thing that I would say will improve your artwork the fastest, that like, if you want a get rich quick scheme as far as like improving your artwork, work on your values. Work on your values, your lights to darks, and how things go from light to dark or dark to light. Where are your midtones? Where are your highlights? Where are your shadows? That's it. And then, based on the form of the object, if it's a sphere, that transition is going to be very smooth, so you can have a hotkey or whatever for your airbrush tool or a soft brush in your brush list. If you want a painterly edge, get a smudge tool. Get a kind of a chalky brush. You know, whenever you're starting to work with values, all of the other fundamentals, in my opinion, are based around that core concept. Because your composition is going to change depending on where your light's coming from, in my opinion. What's going to look better with a hard, cast shadow? Where does that shadow fall on the frame? Well, that's dealing with your values, but that's also teaching you where your composition is going to be. Like, where are your angles? What's your camera perspective? Like, you're thinking about all these things in relation to the lighting setup. Your colors, how saturated are your colors, how desaturated, that comes down to value more than anything else. So you'll probably see me work, especially lately, and even on like my Instagram reels and all that stuff, I'll work in color for a little bit, and then I go back to black and white because I want to make sure my colors, my values read okay. Because everything else is whatever. But there's that old saying in art school that value does the work and color gets the credit. And I think that's true. Values, shadows, midtones, highlights. Where are they? Why are they? Your art's going to improve infinite. You're going to see infinite growth. It's still something I battle every single day, but my art's gotten better because of it. So yeah, values, no question. Last question. So Brent asks, I know gaming does, but how much do other art mediums influence your work, and how do they influence it? So for example, like music, films, books, comic books. So they all impact me very differently. Music, I can't go without music for, an hour or so. Like I need music of some sort to kind of get lost in something. I actually went to college for film directing first. Before I wanted to do art or illustration or any of that stuff. My major was in film production and directing, and my minor was in graphic design. That is how I see the world. I see it through a camera lens. I see it through mentally. When I'm blocking out, I literally block out a shot. I almost make a diorama in my head, like an overhead diorama. Like, okay, what's the distance between these things? Oh, well, if I want a little narrow, that means I would have like a 200 millimeter lens. If I wanted like depth of field and all this other stuff and kind of a tight look, or if I wanted something a little bit more grandiose and bigger to look at, maybe if we're right next to our character, it'd be a 35 mil or a 50 mil lens. That's how my brain works. Or maybe if we want the big vista shot, it's going to be closer to the 20 mil, not quite fisheye, but enough that you can see everything, wide. And also I think in key, think high key or low key. Where do I want my details? Do I want my details on the highlights? Like a bright sunny day and you see all the trees and all this stuff? Or do I want my details in the shadows? Do I want it to be, let's say it's a scene and there's some it's a market and everybody's in kind of the alleyway, and the alleyway is covered with all these, different tents and all this stuff. The sky could be all one super bright color. Doesn't matter, because all of the detail is going to be happening in the shadow, right? That's how my mind works. So my ideas, the imagination itself might not be strong, but I do think one of my strengths is I think like a film director. I like to think, okay, this shot with a Dutch angle, with a this, with a that. That's how I start putting pieces together. And that's going to tell me my light, which is going to tell me my values, which is going to tell me my color, which is going to tell me, as you answer more of those questions, the image starts to exist. And so really film does it as much, if not more than anything. I need to get more dynamic about my angles and the way I want to tell a story. So I actually need to read more comic books. I know, the worst job in the world, right? Like, I need to study comic books. I need to read them not only for enjoyment, but see how they're telling the story. Marco Flores, Nerd in the Bay, from earlier in the episode, he got me back into comics. And he got me back into comics from Dan Slott's The Superior Spider-Man. And I literally fell in love with that book. I used to read, X-Men growing up, and like Spider-Man and like Maximum Carnage and all that stuff. And like Wizard magazine, back with like the Rob Liefeld and Jim Lee and Todd McFarlane covers of that. Super rad magazine. I used to like get it and like trace. Oh, here's Lobo. I'm gonna draw Lobo. I just trace him. But whenever you're 7, that's kind of what you do. But yeah, I think having that sort of direct, impactful, bombastic look would actually be pretty cool to mix with the traditional painterly oil painting Baroque era. I think there's something cool there. Instead of very stoic and like very solemn stuff that I'm used to doing, like, okay, here's someone standing regally. What if it was a big ass action scene, but it was done very painterly? Like, that'd be cool, right? Maybe that's why I like Warhammer art so much. I think it is that, right? You get these crazy, like a Paul Dayton or Igor Sid or, Karl Kopinski. You get these incredible traditional artists that do very bombastic, Frank Frazetta-esque pieces. Yeah, it's pretty rad. That's probably my DNA right there. Mix that with John Woo Hong Kong cinema, and you got me to a T. But anyways, thank you all so very much for all of those questions. Amazing episode. Huge thank you. I'm almost done with my G Fuel here. Had to keep me going for a while. But it's a joy. I love doing these. I need to do these more often. If you have any more questions, please send them in. I will do these on a regular basis. If you send in questions, I will give something resembling answers. And that is my promise to you, the high quality promise. But that is my time. Like I said, links to all sorts of stuff in the description. If you want to be a patron, it's only $1 a month. I will never raise the price. You get Discord access. You get kind of preferential treatment. You get some giveaway stuff. You get discounts on products, all sorts of fun stuff. But that's my time. I've been Wes, and you all have been amazing. And I will see you guys very, very soon. We'll see you then.